Welcome to episode 2 of Lost in Translation with Bobby Martin. I'm Sam Perkins. We're coming to you from the WCTV studios in Wilmington, Massachusetts. Bobby, thank you for joining us once again.
Sam the man, it's good to be back.
How are you doing this morning?
Doing well. My allergies are killing me, but other than that, I'm all right.
Yeah, it was a pretty brutal morning for me. I had yesterday both kids were sick as hell, and it's a miserable experience as a parent, as I'm sure you can attest that when your kids are sick, especially I got a 11-month-old and a 5-year-old, and it was just it's just coming out both ends for both of them. So
Fatherhood is no joke.
Well, I wanted to kind of pick up where we left off, episode 1, where we had talked about your career. We talked about overseas. But before we get into that, I feel like we have to at least acknowledge what happened in Buffalo recently, which is just a horrific tragedy of a shooting that I know the investigation is still ongoing, but let's be honest, it's blatantly obvious that it was a racist motivated shooting of a white teenager who posted a manifesto talking about replacement of white people, and went and drove hours and hours and hours to a predominantly black area and killed 10 people, which is just, it's horrifying. And I don't even know what to fully say about that other than it is absolutely horrifying. You think about going about your day. They talked about the 10 people that lost their lives. I don't know who they is when I say they talked about. I feel like these things never get the appropriate the appropriate acknowledgement for the victims. But these are people that are just going about their day, going shopping, and you think it could happen to anybody. It's any one of us. And it's horrifying that it's like it could happen to anyone, because if you look at the violent crime rates and the gun crime rates in every other country basically in the world, it doesn't compare to the U.S. So, I don't know if you have any thoughts, because for me as a white dude, it's almost like it's not really my place to talk about it other than to say it's horrible and to condemn racism, that it's like it doesn't hit me the same.
So I would probably like to start by saying that I wouldn't give a damn if the guy was white, black, whatever other ethnic group we could name. The fact is that, people died, man. They died unnecessarily. And, I would like to see more information, because what I've learned over the years is not to follow a narrative. It's clear that this guy was sick in the head. I remember when I was coaching college basketball, we had a chance to go to South Carolina. So our hotel was right across the street from the church where Dylan Roof had murdered those victims. And I remember just standing outside the church crying, and you never. I never want to become numb to what's going on.
Yeah.
I think it's. But I am at the point where, I'm saying to myself, how do I explain this to my children? The world is what it is, and if you don't recognize, if you don't pay attention to the facts as you see them, and grow your perspective, then it's going to be a tough world to live in.
Yeah, man. I mean, my kids are so young. It's like I don't know how to have these conversations. My oldest son he has deep conversations all the time. It's really crazy. But talking about this sort of thing, it's like you want to insulate, or I want to insulate, my kids as long as I can. They already, my son Jack already, he's biracial, but he looks very white passing. red hair, just, pale skin.
Yeah.
His hair was super curly when he was young, but now it's straight. But like he knows about race. We don't talk about the terrible things that African Americans have gone through in this country or other groups yet. I don't think he's at the point yet to process that, but we're certainly not going to shield him from learning about that. But he's still, he notices, why does he look, one way or look another? Or sometimes he'd say like, that he's black inside but white outside, and sometimes he'll say that he's glad that he is. Sometimes he'll say that he wishes that he was black on the outside. Sometimes, so it's just interesting to see him processing these things. But you look at your kids. I look at my wife, my kids, my loved ones, and you think like there's no way to protect yourself at all times from the awful things out there. It's terrible to almost just think, well, I'm just leaving it up to random chance. People have all these different philosophies on, and I don't even need to get into, but people talk about, getting a permit to carry a firearm or not, or, all these different things that could maybe mitigate to a degree, better legislation on making it harder for people to buy firearms and all this sort of stuff. But it's like at the end of the day, you're mitigating to a degree, but there still is that it's just random chance. You leave your house and it's like every day you come back and you get to kiss your loved ones and hug your loved ones. It's still a degree of random chance, and it's really hard to think about that, to realize that you can only do so much and there's still just a powerless factor of luck and random chance that you come home each night.
Yeah, it's tough. I think as parents what we end up doing is we fall back on the lessons that our parents gave us. And, I've said this before and it keeps coming to mind that my grandmother used to say, you can't prepare the road for the child, you have to prepare the child for the road. And growing up in Atlantic City was a melting pot of all different cultures. I mean, Italians, Jews, blacks, whites. But these were different cultures. What we ended up doing was finding a common ground, where, whether it's sports or just, hobbies. Yeah. And to see, I don't know who this guy was. I don't even know his name. Yeah. But, for that to happen, it's extremely disheartening. And I think the biggest thing we have to understand is what we can't do is, because it's someone that looks like him, we can't look at them like they are him.
Yeah.
And that's tough. That's tough because the world says otherwise. I think we grow up in a world that shows us, or in a country that shows us nothing but division.
Yeah.
And when you're growing up in a culture that shows you division, the biggest lesson our kids could probably learn is how to unify themselves. And I'm not talking about with someone else. I'm just talking about who they are as people. Because it's tough to find out. I'm still finding out. I know I'm capable of whatever. I just don't know what that trigger is. And thankfully, I haven't found it. So, I just don't want to be triggered. I would much rather spend my time trying to help my kids understand who they are.
Yeah. It's funny you say that you're still figuring it out. It took me a long time to realize that I'm still figuring it out. I thought, and for a long time, I felt like I had a really bad case of arrested development because of different things that happened in my life. Like, I'm not where I was supposed to be, where I should be. Where I am now is where I should have been 10 years ago. And it's like, I guess you just can't really look at it like that because we're in a constant state of evolving. I know my own dad, before he died, he was in his, let me think. I always do the math. It's been so long. So 47. So he was in his 60s. And when he was in his 60s, one of the proudest things I have, and he was my hero growing up. As a kid, this giant person, athlete. But one of the proudest things that I was in hindsight as I've gotten older is that when he was in his 60s, he continued to evolve on things like race. Which it's really hard to evolve late in life. So that's something that I'm proud of because when I was younger, I had a lot of friends that were black and of different races, and he was like fine with that. But when I started dating outside of my race, when he noticed, girls that I would like, middle school, they get into high school, he got very uncomfortable with it. And the end of high school for me and right before his death, he was really getting more comfortable with things. And it was impressive to me in hindsight now to be able to evolve. And he wasn't perfect, and there are views of his that I didn't hold or that I think I will always be different from him on certain things, but that it was impressive to see someone evolve on stuff like that in their 60s, and it gives me hope that as a country we can. But I mean, I don't know if we'll be able to do it at the macro level instead of just individuals in my lifetime. I hope in my lifetime things are better when my son is my age than they are now. Mm-hmm. My sons are my age. It's so hard for me to think about the younger one almost as like the same, even though my older one's only 5. It's like it's harder to project with like a baby than being an adult. Mm-hmm. But and I think it will be better because things are better now than they were when I was a kid in many ways. I think we lose sight of that because of the era that we're in, the digital era that we're in, where everything gets uploaded and yep. So you see all this terrible stuff. But it's like the world's always been a terrible place. These things have always been going on, even worse. It just wasn't that instant upload to the internet because everyone has a phone.
Yeah, I mean, not everyone has the same resolution of the picture. You know, there are different levels to all of this, and you know, it's funny that you mentioned evolution. I remember growing up, and in school, you're learning about Darwin's mm-hmm. theory of evolution, and it was odd that at the end of his life, he said that. Basically that one thing he discounted was environment, mm-hmm. And that the environment absolutely has an effect on what he would call the cell. Okay, that's what they would call it. And I thought that was interesting because depending on your environment, you're going to be influenced by it. It's not just it's not your genes; it's gene manipulation. Yeah. So, I mean, it's always fascinated me, and when I talk to kids today, when I'm speaking to my own children, I speak to them about their environment. Be aware of your surroundings, and in order to do that, you have to actually present yourself to a surrounding to figure out what's going on. And as parents, we never want to do that. My daughter's 12, and I'm still nervous about her walking to the store.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, man.
I mean, that terrifies me to think about. And it's like, I remember when I was 12, and I grew up in a city, and I would go to the pizza place. I go, just walk home from school by myself, go to the pizza place, play basketball with my friends after school, like hang out until 5, 6, 7 o'clock, whenever. And I think about now my son as a 12-year-old, when he's at that point, I'm like thinking about him walking home by him, and it's just like, it's terrifying to me. But is the world more dangerous now? No. It's just always been.
It's always been that way.
I think we had a facade. Society had a facade in certain communities and certain towns, whatever, where you act like it's Pleasantville and it's like everything's perfect, Smallville, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it's always been
Truman Show,
dangerous.
Like
yeah.
Yeah.
So I know that we talked. Our last episode, our first episode, and I'm very excited about this. I'm hoping that this is many, 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 many episodes down the road because I'm having a blast, even if we're talking about unpleasant topics, just the experience with you. But we talked about kind of the arc of your career from first picking up a basketball, high school, getting into it, college, overseas, retirement. The question that I have specifically about overseas now, getting a little more into the minutia, I guess, is when you were over there culturally, when you're not playing ball, because there's a lot of downtime. You play 2 games a week if you're playing in a league, in a domestic league and in a Euro, league with teams from different countries. So there's a lot of downtime. I mean, you practice, you've got your practice, but still a lot of downtime. What was the culture shock? Was there culture shock when you first got there? And over the years, how did you deal with that much downtime in a foreign country?
Again, we're talking evolution.
Yeah.
When I got there, it was a different world. The internet was just really peaking, I still remember the landlines where, you'd hear the screeching and everything, trying to connect. So I think the biggest thing about overseas is that you have to ingratiate yourself to the culture. I mean, when in Rome, do as the Romans. I believe that used to be the saying. And it's not like we had a huge amount of time because you're practicing twice a day. So if you get up in the morning, you're probably in the gym 3 hours in the morning. You go home. The whole country basically takes a nap, siesta.
Yep.
And you wake up from siesta and it's time to go back to practice or, get ready to go back to practice. You can have your snack and maybe sit out and have a coffee or something, which I loved. Yeah. And, you were ready for practice again. You probably weren't getting out of the gym until, 8 o'clock and getting ready for dinner. But those moments where you had a lot of free time, it was just spent observing, what's going on around here. Maybe you're shopping and, okay, they've got this, they've got that. Well, maybe I can order this. And it was always mañana, 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 if you wanted something. So
I've heard they move at a different speed.
They move at a totally different speed, man. I mean, this is the tortoise and the hare. And there weren't a lot of American goods.
Yeah.
So, I spent my time learning how to cook a little bit better for myself. My grandmother taught me how to cook for myself when I was young. But now I really had the time to delve into it a little bit more. And taking naps. Naps are so great.
Yeah.
Great.
I don't get enough naps. I wish that I was able to get more. My wife's able to get some every once in a while. But I remember there's nothing like when you're an athlete and you're working hard and you get a break and they just take a nap. And it is an experience that I miss. How long did it take you, because you spent almost all of your career playing in Spain, and I know that you're certainly still conversational, you were fluent, and I think it's one of those things that you speak it more, it comes back, but how long did it take you to get conversational to the degree that you felt like you could just talk with people here and there? Maybe that's fully fluent, but how long did it take you over there? And did you do classes, or was it just picking it up from being out in the environment?
I learned picking it up in the environment. The environment that I was placed in was a team environment. And the Spanish guys, what I thought was a brutal way of breaking me in as far as, learning the culture, they actually did me a favor. They spoke to me in Spanish. Now, basketball, of course, is an international language. So you understand positions on the court. And whatever name they had for it, and don't get me wrong, English is Latin-based. Yeah. So you understood partly what they were saying, all right? But they spoke to me in Spanish only. And I was lucky enough to have 2 Americans on my team who were fluent in Spanish. So they translated for me, and it didn't take me long to become quite conversational. I would say the first year I learned how to have a conversation. By the middle of my second year, I could do an interview. And it was mostly because I didn't know what they were saying about me. So I wanted to make sure, what did he say? And I would say by the middle of my second year in Spain, I could hold a pretty good conversation and do an interview. Your
experiences over there as a black man, was it different than being in America?
So, no. I'm going to say no, and this is why. I'd be silly to sit here and say that my stature, my physical stature, doesn't give me advantages. Okay? My physical stature gave me advantages in Europe also. They knew I was a basketball player. I was American, so whatever Spanish I spoke was with an American accent. Yeah. I was on TV every day, and they didn't feel as threatened. Now, as far as racism is concerned, I was what I noticed is if I went to Madrid and I went to Barcelona and I spoke to the people, the people from Barcelona hated the people from Madrid. The people from Madrid hated the people from Barcelona. So that was one aspect of that racism that they had there. Okay, this is my group, this is your group. Yeah. the southern Spain was different. Southern Spain had a lot more black people in it.
Yep.
People who looked like me, and I happened to be in southern Spain. But they were being treated like shit. They were coming over. I mean, Spain is, especially if you're talking southern Spain or the Canary Islands, you're closer to Africa.
Yep.
So they were coming over on the boats, and you'd see the Coast Guard, Spanish Coast Guard, stopping them and keeping in their place, putting them in their camps. Mm-hmm. And of course, I heard all type of crazy shit. They're trying to ruin our country, this, that, and the other, and then they turn around and they hate each other.
Yeah.
So, I've seen it from many areas, man. This is just it's tribalism at its best, or I should say at its worst. And but when I sit back and look at it, I mean, you and I can sit here and have a conversation. We share a lot in common, and that's what we stick to. I think everything around us just divides us, man, from religion to color to everything else. And I'm tired of being divided.
Yeah.
I need to pull myself together.
Well, it's something that I learned later on in life when I started to really understand the scope of the racial divide that is now worldwide, and there's all these different, it's tribalism, and it's. But what's so sad is that race is such a huge part of society now, but the concept of it only came into existence in the 1500s. If you look at history, before that, race wasn't a dividing. It wasn't even something people believed in, that like the notion of race. Like people saw people are different colors, obviously, because people were interacting. There was trade going on. But it wasn't this like, oh, well, you have this skin color. Everyone with this skin color, we think, shares these traits and is the same people. And everyone with this skin color has these traits and is the same people. And they're totally different. That like if you look at the empires, whether it's ancient Egypt, Rome, Mesopotamia, Carthage, all these different Greece. There's just in human history, the empires that have risen and fallen, they got so big that they did trade with other empires in, Africa, Europe, Asia, and people would migrate and would become citizens or whatever at the time the belief was. All different races. Like I look at Rome because you think of Rome as being, it's Europe where we have this notion of being white and being white. But like in the Roman Empire, they traded throughout Africa. There were people that were of African ancestry that were citizens of Rome that achieved different positions. That race was not something that held people back or determined what position they could hold. It wasn't until the 1500s that this notion, and it was really because of, we're voyaging the New World. We want to harvest all the stuff from the New World, the resources to get rich. We need human bodies to be able to come and work for free, essentially. So let's find a way to justify it. And if you think of it, that's about 1500s. Now that's like 500 years. 500 years in the grand scope of human existence is like that. It's such a minuscule part that humans have been around that this notion of race has existed. And yet it's such a big part of society now. It's like, it's just crazy.
Yeah. See, I was taught differently. I know our history as Americans, as far as Western civilization is concerned. The histories that I learned about were, like for instance, one of the things I learned was when we talk about Greece, and this is nothing against my Greek brothers and sisters, but where did you learn these things from? They weren't just ideas that came up. I mean, these were ideas that you took from other cultures. Yeah. And now we find paleontologists and everyone else, telling us that the world is, and I've always believed that the world can't be 6,000 years old. It has to be much, as far as we're concerned, as far as religion teaches us, it's 6,000 years old, or, a little bit more.
Yeah.
But wait a minute. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we know it's been around a lot longer
than that.
Millions of years.
Exactly. So I was taught, he who knows one book knows none.
Yeah.
Okay. So, if I'm going to have a conversation, and I'd much rather sit down and say, okay, well, show me what you got. And, okay, well, here's, the evolution of man or, whatever. I mean, you can, I think even with, our creation stories, whether the creation stories come from, Mesopotamia or, people are talking about the Bible and this, that, and the other. Christians have their version. Judaism has its culture, version. Muslims have their culture, but there are three Abrahamic religions.
Yeah.
So,
The Jews tell stories? Well, we don't do that. We don't do that.
No,
we don't talk. We don't like to talk.
They're great for perspective. I don't have to agree with it, but I need to know where you're coming from, and maybe we can find some common ground.
So, not to jump around too much, but I feel like that this happens when there's so much that trying to cover in these first two episodes of kind of setting the. But we talked about your career, and we talked about when it came to an end, and you had said that you didn't have regrets at that point, which that's amazing to not have regrets, not have bigger. Well, no. I mean, not having regrets, but be at peace with the decision at the time. Mm-hmm. So I think you did say we all have regrets.
Yes, exactly.
Which I agree with. But so backtrack, not regrets, but to reach the end of that specific road and be turning on to the next road and be at peace with that decision is something that a lot of athletes don't have. So that's to me is impressive. I'm hoping maybe we could just go a little more in depth into when it came to an end. Where did you go next? Did you have a plan?
So, in trying to relate ball is life to this conversation, if I'm going to use the terminology transition, transition is whether you're transitioning on offense or you're transitioning back on defense. My transition was smooth, as smooth as it could possibly be, as far as my viewpoint was concerned, because I had people around me. I had a great support system. Basketball at this point it's never ended for me. I've just made room for something else. Probably for the me that's always been here. I was at peace because I gave it everything I had. I remember specifically, one girlfriend I had, when I was on this protein diet, no sugar, and it's a hard diet to be on. Especially when you're in America and you're looking at Wendy's and I want a Baconator. And she said, "Man, you were serious about this because I'm getting up, I'm eating my steaks, I've got my broccoli. I mean, this is steak for breakfast, chicken for lunch, fish for dinner, no sugars, no nothing." She says, "You are serious." And I said, "Well, I've got to act like this is my career." And I had to be in it and of it. You can't pretend. You're either a player or you're a pretender.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a player. So, and again, my mentor at the time made it easy for me, easier for me. I mean, it's hard to physically not be able to compete the way you want to.
Yeah.
But I was still able to stay in the game and start to give back what I had learned.
You mentioned your mentor at the time. Is that Wayne that we're talking about?
It is Wayne, yeah.
Tell me about Wayne. Tell me about his impact on your life, your relationship with him.
Okay.
I know Wayne. Wayne is a character.
He's a force in nature.
Wayne is a 5 foot something, and it's below 5'10", and it's probably below 5'9", force of nature.
Yes, absolutely. So there are people who communicate and there are people who connect. Wayne is good at both, all right? No, he's a master at both. This is a short, bald, Jewish white man, all right, who found a way to touch my heart and my mind. So when those two come together, you're basically unstoppable, okay? I was failing as a pro. Wayne walked in, and there was an old reporter named Peter Vesey, and Wayne looked so much like Peter Vesey that I was just brushing him off because Wayne can talk, right? And and he was saying things at the time that I probably wasn't ready to hear, especially when you're failing. You don't want people telling you, "Hey, you're failing." Yep. All right. Now he was trying to tell me he could help me, but there were messages that I just wasn't prepared to hear. But anyway. this guy has done so much for for athletes that I'm fortunate enough to have had him come to me and be a part of my life. And again, when you're talking about racism, if I am looking at you and I disagree with your belief, then I'm probably not going to open up my mind to anything positive that you have to say. And as athletes, we're pretty fixed into what we want. He just found a way to communicate with me and help me achieve what I wanted.
Wayne, you talked about him being he's a short, bald Jewish guy, and that you just brushed him off at first. Do you think that his physical appearance, and Wayne's he's not an unathlete. I mean, him and his brother Keith keep himself in good shape. Keith's a strength trainer. But do you think that initially you dismissed him because of exterior?
Absolutely. Which is why, again, we started on the topic of racism.
Yeah.
It's what I see. My resolution wasn't strong enough, right, to see through my own perception. And like I said, the guy touched my heart. I brushed him off because he was short, he was bald, not necessarily because he was white, but you just don't match the profile of a good basketball coach.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I've had Hall of Fame coaches.
Yeah.
He didn't look like one.
Yep.
So I'm like, no, I'm out.
How long did it take, do you think, for him to connect with you and you to start buying in?
It took me, rookie years. So I came out in 91. We started working together in 94. I probably met him in the summer of 91 for the first time.
Wow, so like 3 years, yeah.
Yes, and when you're, and I was failing as a pro. I was in everybody's summer camp, and I'm doing decently, but not enough for anyone to say yes to me. Just, hey, we'll have you back. So yeah, it took me almost 3 years to get myself together.
Do you think if you had gotten with Wayne, if you had met him and had bought in, say in college, like a lot of the guys that you and Wayne would bring in were college players, do you think your career arc might have been different if you had started working with him sooner?
Absolutely. Yeah. When I think about my career arc after I started working with him, it always makes you think, oh man, I wish I would have done this sooner. So yes, absolutely.
You think as a guy that was on the cusp of the NBA that maybe it happens if you got with him from the beginning?
Yes, it happens. Although I don't know if I end up being the me that I am today. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn.
Yeah. I think that's a great mindset, and it's something that I have to remind myself, too, about, because when we talked about regrets in the previous episode, I can't say I'm someone that has no regrets. I've got a lot of them. Mm-hmm. But I do have to remind myself that if not for all of those failings, I might not be the person, I might not have the things that I have, the family that I have today. Right. So when you start being on the other side of the ball and you start being a coach, you start training the next generation, you're working with, there are a lot of guys that came through Wayne's that were, people might not go, oh, that's an NBA superstar, but they were names people would recognize, and players that it seemed like were straddling that line between NBA and not, or were not yet there, or had been there, failed, and he helped get them back there. But how would you describe becoming a coach, a trainer, and working with players now? I mean, is it frustrating at times because you're still a younger guy relatively when you're coaching, you start coaching, you see kids that either can't do the things that you could do, or kids that maybe have the opportunities and they're not taking full advantage, not buying in. Like, what is that like when you transition to coaching?
So, I mean, it's nuanced. All right. As far as the physical part is concerned, we've all got different physical capabilities. So, of course, there are guys I would look at and say, he's not going hard enough, because my MO is that I'm going to go hard and give you everything I have. Mentally, because I had played the game and I had learned from so many great players, you have to sit and check yourself before you start correcting the young guys, because the mode of correction when I was a kid was more of don't cry about it, don't talk about it, be about it. And now I think with our kids as we try to raise them, the messages aren't as harsh, aren't as abrupt. And the kids today aren't, I'm not going to say that they aren't built for them. I'm saying that that's not their particular preference. And that's tough because as a coach, especially as a coach today, if you're dealing with kids who aren't as emotionally resilient, then your job's on the line. So you're always fighting yourself and you're fighting the kid, who has no idea of what he or she is about to go through. It's tough, and you're not a player anymore. Yeah. So, what do? You try to garner respect by reaching their minds and their hearts.
Do you still ever pick up? I've seen you working kids out to this day. When you're hands-on, when you're there, you'll do a move in front of them. Mm-hmm. You knock down shots like crazy. That carries weight with kids. Mm-hmm. Hey, this person could do. He can walk the walk, not just talk the talk. Do you ever, on your own time, though, when no one's in the gym or you're not training kids, do you ever still pick up a basketball and shoot? Or play? Is that something that you ever do anymore for fun, or is it?
I will pick up a basketball to shoot because I don't want to be embarrassed in front of the kids if I'm showing them something. But to play, no. I'm thinking, who's going to put me back together if something breaks? No, I have no desire to play. I haven't had a desire to play for a long while now. It's probably been over a decade. Oh. Even with my son, I would never play him one-on-one. Because I knew the competitive spirit in me would have taken me away from being a father.
Yeah.
I don't need to prove myself against my son. I know it's nothing against fathers and parents doing that with their children. But just me, I couldn't do it. That's not the way I wanted to teach him. So.
Was basketball fun throughout your career? Or did it ever reach a point where it wasn't fun? It's a job when you're playing professionally. It's a job in college. A lot of people, when we talk about NIL stuff in a bit, there's this big misconception about they're amateur. No, it's a job. But was it a fun job, or were there times when it wasn't fun?
Basketball is always fun. It has always been fun for me. I think where people lose the love for the game is, when they're disappointed because something didn't happen the way they conceive that it should have, or you don't enjoy the continuous cost of playing. There's always a cost, man, and it never stops. You keep giving and giving and giving, and it takes a lot of energy. And if you don't have something or someone to replenish that energy, to help you replenish that energy, then it gets extremely tough. But I was fortunate, man, where I had people, the game stayed fun for me, and I loved the work behind it.
So today, present day, you're still training athletes. Mm-hmm. You help out with an AAU program. You train them. You coach them. Talk about who are you working with today? Like what kind of, you didn't give me specific names, but what kind of players are you working with today? And has that evolved or changed over your time training people?
So the players I'm working with today are mostly high school players. Kids who, for one reason or another, haven't found themselves. They may not even be good enough to play high school basketball. What I get a chance to do is I get a chance to help them find themselves through the sport, and I use the court as my classroom. We talk life. The basketball is the easy part. You can teach people different techniques according to their strength areas, and you can fill different holes. But I love kids, working with kids who have no chance, and giving them hope. That's on the basketball side of things, and, and the strength training side of things. You talked about the NILs. Right now, I'm a part of an agency with a friend of mine who also played basketball back in the day, and you know him. We've created an agency, and we're helping some very good football players grab some NILs. We ended up signing the first basketball player in upstate New York to an NIL deal. To the first NIL deal in upstate New York, I should say. And right now we have one of the top receivers in the country who is committed to the University of Pittsburgh. And among others. It's called Glory to Glory Sports Agency, and we're loving what we're doing because, with the landscape of college basketball or college sports being the way it is now, man, it's the kids absolutely have a chance to be something more than they would have been.
So NIL, for those that aren't aware, it's name, image, and likeness. And there was a landmark Supreme Court ruling a little while back that basically said that the NCAA for college sports was it basically was the long and short of it is that college athletes are essentially employees, are workers, and they were not being compensated, that denying them the right to make money off of their work was illegal. And so before that, college athletes could not get endorsement deals, they could not get sponsorships. You basically couldn't make money for being an athlete in college. And you had athletes that made the big-time Division I colleges, the North Carolinas and Dukes in basketball, the Auburns and Alabamas and University of Miamis in football. Mm-hmm. Those programs, they make millions. And the NCAA as a whole, the schools make billions, the big-time schools, off of college athletics, off of their TV deals, off of sponsorship and endorsement deals with sports companies, off all this stuff. But the athletes that are out there that are doing the work, they couldn't make a cent off of their name. The schools could use that. When you Bobby Martin at Pitt could put you on a billboard, say, come buy tickets, over the highway. Absolutely. They could make all kinds of money off of you, but you weren't allowed to sign an endorsement deal with a local sporting goods store that would give you money to buy pizza every week. If you did that, the NCAA would say you're in violation, you're ineligible, you can't play for X amount of games, or if they've determined it was bad enough, you'd just lose your eligibility forever. Yeah. And so this ruling changed it. So now athletes can make money, and it's been, really the first year of it. And kids are signing endorsement deals. Some of them at small schools are signing small ones, like out of UMass. I think it was a moving company was signing some kids out there. But then you've got other kids that are signing these massive deals. Like there's kids at the University of Miami are millions and millions of dollars. Yes. But what are your feelings on NIL? Because I was an athlete, but I was never a big enough athlete, even in my prime, as a baseball player, college baseball players, unless you're at unless you're at one of the biggest time. Nobody knows who you are. So I never would have been in a position to make more than pizza money. But you, back in your prime, could have and probably should have. So I'm wondering, what are your views on the NIL?
So I'm going to start by saying that this is something that the NCAA has created. Frankenstein was the doctor, not the monster.
Yeah.
So now they're trying to put the genie back in the bottle. And I don't know if they're going to be able to do it. I absolutely believe that the kids should be able to make money off of their name, image, and likeness. I'm kind of jealous. Coming out of high school, we had the number one recruiting class in the country. So I don't know if Pitt would have been able to afford us. Okay? There's a kid at Pitt, a receiver. He just won the Biletnikoff Award. At the end of last season, and he's going to USC for $2 million. So, this is something that's always been around. It's just now that it's legal. So the big scandals that we heard about, that involved actually one of my ex-college teammates and good friend of mine, Sean Miller.
Yeah.
And all these other schools, you hear about Bill Self and everybody else, and what Adidas and and TJ Gasnola and all these guys. Well, now it's legal.
Yeah.
So the sneaker companies themselves are going to say, look, we can pay whomever we want as much as we want, and it's all legal. The boosters are now fighting because they're the ones that want to give the money to the kids.
Yeah, and to me, like you said, this was always going on. Not to the same degree of financially, because it's all under the table, so you can't really give a kid $1 million without being found out. But to me, it's one, if you're doing the work, which is these kids are, there was for generations, what kind of started all of this was there was EA Sports had these college basketball and football games that they were putting out for, like Sega Genesis and Nintendo 64. And they would have on the cover of the game when you would go and buy it, they would have a college basketball player, whoever it was Ed O'Bannon started.
Shout out to Ed O'Bannon.
Yeah, big to Ed O'Bannon, UCLA national champion. I remember when they won the whole thing, they beat Arkansas. Was up late that night. I think I was in the 5th grade. But they used his image to sell games, to make millions. I mean, the EA Sports franchise was probably made billions of dollars overall.
Right.
And using college athletes in their marketing, but college athletes didn't get a dime from that. And it's like, if you're going to use someone's image to sell your goods, they should get a cut. If University of North Carolina, or I remember, my favorite college basketball player. I grew up, my dad played at UMass. Lou Rowe was my favorite player. Shout out to Lou, your guy from Atlantic City.
AC.
I remember looking for a Lou Rowe number 15 jersey, and it's like UMass is selling the number 15 jerseys, and then the number Camby was 21 or 23. I can't believe I'm forgetting this. That's embarrassing. But Lou Rowe and Marcus Camby, they're selling their jerseys. UMass was when they were big time.
Yep.
And of course, I'm buying it with the number of my favorite player.
Yes.
I know whose jersey that is as a 5th grader. I want a Lou Rowe jersey, or a 4th grader.
Yes.
Like, they're raking in money, and the players who are the reason why they're selling these jerseys can't get a dime. That's why I don't understand the opposition. I understand the opposition from schools in the NCAA, because they stand to lose a lot of money. They had a monopoly on making money. It was them, and the coaches are the ones that make the money, and the players are getting nothing. So the pie gets cut up more now for the money that you're bringing in. I understand. I don't think they're right, but I understand the motivation. But I don't understand the motivation of these fans and people that sit back that are like opposed to it. Like, oh, it's going to be the end. It's such a terrible thing. It's like, why? Because people are actually getting paid for their work.
Yeah, what it does is have you ever been in the shower and somebody comes and throws cold water on you when you're taking a hot shower? That's what it feels like to those people. Look, and I'm saying this as a college athlete. There were months when, I was wondering when I was going to get something to eat.
Yeah.
It's tough when you're not allowed to even get a free meal. But, you get training table during the season, you get your lunch, you get your regular college meals as everyone else, if you pay for at that time were lunch tickets or whatever.
Yeah.
But in the end, the NCAA was full of, some people in the NCAA were full of shit.
Yeah.
Look, I think what they say is, well, you can, we're giving you a free ride to college. You're getting a scholarship. If you're sitting in a room with 300 people, do you think the professors are going to notice if you're not in there?
Yeah.
Most people weren't fortunate enough, most players weren't fortunate enough to come out of school and play professionally like I did. I was fortunate enough to do it, and I was going down the wrong track. There was a huge chance that I wouldn't make it.
Yep.
Right? But fortunately, I found the right people, or the right people found me. But most athletes don't play professionally. So now you graduate from college, hopefully, then you come out into a job market that doesn't exist. So if you're talking the Milton Friedman, taking the Milton Friedman look at things, you're saying, okay, well, we're going to take advantage of this disaster. And that's exactly what the kids are doing today. They're going to take advantage of this. It should have always been like this. There's no amateurism.
No, exactly. And I always remember a story, and I've heard millions of them, but so a guy that I know, his name is Asane Faye. He played at the University of New Hampshire. Graduated in 2002, so I was a senior in high school. Not to date anyone here, but and Asan was really, really smart. Super, like NBA level athleticism, 6'7", 6'8" wing at UNH. So
Okay,
it's like,
UNH,
what do you do?
okay.
What are you doing up there? UNH is a small Division I program for people that don't know. Almost nobody goes to the games up there. Like relatively, a couple hundred fans for a basketball game. Basketball is not. They've got hockey and football are bigger up there.
Okay.
But football, even they're the football championship subdivision. So FCA. So they're like 1AA used to be the lower level of Division I for football. It's a small school in a small town. It is not a national power. It is not a team that really makes money on its athletics. So Asane, this is a guy who is notoriously UNH has very tough admissions standards that a lot of players that different coaches over the years wanted to recruit for men's basketball. They could not get them through admissions, and these were good students, good kids. That the admissions was very tough. They didn't really give them breaks like some schools will give breaks for different athletes and other things too, legacies, kids that whose families donated enough money for a new library, whatever. But UNH really didn't give breaks to athletics. So Asane goes there. He's from Senegal, I think, originally. He goes there. He's a great student. He's in, I believe it was an engineering program. It's a really tough program. I think it was engineering. And when he was recruited, the program was one of the reasons that he made the choice to go to UNH. And the coaches...
The engineering program.
The engineering program.
Yes.
And the coaches said, yeah, you can come here. You play for us. You get this degree that you want. And this is the allure. People will say, well, college athletes don't need to be paid. What I'm getting at here is college athletes don't need to be paid because they're getting their degree for free. But the problem is, what is the value of that degree, and are you actually getting that degree? And I use Asane as an example because he went there. He was recruited. They used this great program, academic program, to get him to commit there over other places. His junior year, there's a coaching change. The coach said he has going into his senior year now, he has a lab at nights.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
And the coach now, head coach, says, basically, you need to change your major because this lab interferes with practice. And Asane's, I've been here for 3 years. I'm about to graduate. This degree is the reason why I committed here. And the coach is saying, well, no, we need you at all of our practices. And so if you're recruiting kids and the motto that all these people that are saying kids shouldn't be paid is, well, you're getting a free degree. But what's that degree worth? Because a lot of these programs are forcing kids into easy majors that you can't really do anything with because they want them to dedicate their entire lives in college to the sport, not to the pursuit of the academics, not to anything else we talk about with college, but we talk about the sport. Now, Asane said, no. I'm going to this class. I'm a senior. I'm getting this degree. And his senior year, he basically winds up being benched. He plays coming off the bench, but he was a world-class athlete in a small Division I conference. And he does not get the playing time that his abilities deserve because the coach, he's in the doghouse because of prioritizing his academics.
Right.
And so this is the thing I always think about, and this is at a small program. Imagine it at these big-time programs. There was a scandal several years ago at North Carolina where there was kind of a specific major that they were funneling basketball and football players into.
Yes.
That that they were saying that kids really couldn't do much with a degree in the major, and that there were joke classes, and it's we need to just it's pulling back the curtain in the Wizard of Oz of all these notions that we were told about what college athletics is all about and the student athlete. It's not true. It's about money. It's about winning. And we bring kids in as athletes. They're being brought in to focus on that sport.
Yes. Wow. That's a great story, and it's completely accurate. UNH, and what was the kid's name?
Asane Faye.
Asane. It's not an uncommon story. The scandal that was going on at UNC a couple of years ago that you mentioned, it goes on more. That happens a lot more than people think. It's hard to you declare a major. Your major may require more time in the classroom than it does on the court. And to ask this young man to come back and give up his lifelong dream, he wanted to go to college, and say, well, you have to have something to fall back on. Now you are taking away what he needs to fall back on after he's done. Look, all coaches aren't good coaches. All people aren't good people. Look, it's part of life, but I'm proud of that young man for standing up to what he believed in. And right now, those are the unintended consequences that happen. So even if you're talking NILs, now, as we mentioned, you come out of school looking to get into a job market that it's going to be tough to get into, right? The value of the dollar is basically nothing now, right? So are you angry at a kid for making more of a less valuable dollar so they have a chance to actually start their lives afterwards? If you tell me that 1% plays professional basketball, but you're good enough to earn a scholarship to college, well, what's going to happen? Some of the teams that aren't revenue generating are probably going to take the brunt of it because they're going to have to allocate that money to paying their players. But if the player's smart and the parents are smart, they're going to help that young man or that young woman, all right, save that money, put it away, so when they come out of school, they will probably have made more money than they will have in their first half a decade of being out of school. And those are, the top tier. I mean, you got to be kidding me. This is supposed to happen. Good for them.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing to think about, too, is like you think about kids that go to school for different things. They will use whatever their skill set is to make an income. Those that are, whether it's in the summer. So let's say you got into a prestigious Ivy League school. Mm-hmm. I mean, geez, how many kids have I seen or, advertising tutoring services while they're in school, like SAT prep services. I got into Harvard. I got a 1,600 on my SATs. You see the flyers. You see it online. I'm offering tutoring, SAT prep. Like, those kids are allowed to use what made them attractive to colleges to make income. Kids that are in medical school, once you do your residency, that's part of med school.
Yes.
You get paid. Yes. Now, you don't get paid a full doctor's salary, that people talk about being starving med students, but you are able to make something from that. You're going to medical school. You're using the skills that you're going to college with at this kind of job training placement residency. You're getting paid a salary. It's not a full doctor's salary. But so if kids are world-class college athletes, why shouldn't they be able to get endorsement deals or over the summer run camps? They go back to you go back home for a couple weeks in the summer, because that's the thing other people don't understand. Yes. College athletes, for the most part, in the summer, even at the Division III level, you have to be on campus for part of the summer.
You got to be on campus.
You're doing classes, you're in the weight, you've got structured lifts, you have workouts. So it's not like you're able to go back home.
They're not normal college kids.
And go work at your local McDonald's, or go work at a summer camp, for the whole summer to make some money to get you through the college year. Like, you're expected to be on college for at least one of the 2 summer semesters.
Yes.
So why shouldn't you be able to make money? They have these kids. How about, did you ever work a camp? I know I did when you're in college. I don't know about with you, where your coaches or your program will run a summer camp. Mm-hmm. And players on the team are expected to work the camp?
Yes, we had Little Panthers.
And not get paid for working the camp?
I've heard about that.
Yeah.
I've heard guys didn't get paid.
Yeah. and it's just expected that you're a member of this program, you work the camp, and you know who gets paid from the camp? The coaches get paid from the camp.
Coaches get paid. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. So isn't this is totally against the free market capitalism that the boosters and the schools and everybody else that tries to teach us, right? We learn about this all the time. Well, what's going on with free market capitalism now? Well, because we finally figured out that we should be getting paid, and we fought for it. Now it's, you can't. And please. I've got some choice words in Spanish, but I won't use them.
Well, I believe that brings us to the end of our second episode. Bobby, I really appreciate once again. I'm looking forward to episode 3, which will drop next week. I'm hoping that people will continue to tune in. Any thoughts, Bobby? Any final thoughts?
Shout out to Ed O'Bannon. Love you, man.
Shout out to Ed O'Bannon. I'm so glad that they beat Arkansas that year, by the way. I couldn't have dealt with Arkansas winning back-to-back. So thank you, Ed O'Bannon. Salvage day, miserable end of the year for me because my UMass Minutemen fell to Big Country Bryant Reeves in the Elite Eight. If Lou Rowe didn't have the flu that game and the late Mike Williams hadn't been booted from the team, who knows what might have happened. Might have had our first championship and only championship in UMass basketball history.
I'm sure Cal and Lou would have told you.
Yeah.